Alright, so King William of Great Britain gave up on many of the power-grabbing, absolutist tendencies of the other kings that he had succeeded, which made way for the Glorious Revolution, bestowing the island with economic fortunes. As a result, England enjoys the first world economic status and high living standards. King William ceased interference in the legal processes that were spearheaded by the parliamentarians, for he understood that the modus operandi of the parliamentarians was for the greater good and for the betterment of the general public. Pluralism ignites responsiveness as it calls for public voices to be heard. But all too often, kingships and monarchies, especially the Zulu monarchy, rule with dynamics of absolutism and disregard for the upliftment of the Zulu people. The institutional interest of the Ingonyama Trust solely looks after the interest of the king and his relatives. It is a rarity that any common Zulu person has access to the tens of millions of rands that are bankrolling the livelihood of the Zulu king, thus dooming the legitimacy of the Ingonyama Trust. It's just about the lavish lifestyle of the king, demonstrated by a multitude of glamorous homes that are scattered across KZN and exotic cars flashing blue lights, while everyone else in Ngoma is reduced to a uniform level of mediocrity. My homeland is still relatively poor and has a large number of unproductive people who are either dropouts from school or in working age, caught up in an indefinite period of idleness. This is not natural. During apartheid, people had to travel to find paid work in areas built by the white man. This process continues today. There has not been a reversal of this trend. The Ingonyama Trust and the King and the Zulu monarchy are key stakeholders in Ngoma and have all the power to drive growth and prosperity in that northeastern part of Zululand. However, the encouragement of growth is improbable because how the King rules Ngoma is inherently in a manner that is not pluralistic. The Ngoma town looks like an 18th century Bulgarian market. Throughout the entire town, there are no traffic lights to moderate congestion. The town is occupied by livestock. There is overcrowding and roads are too narrow and fractured. We need properly educated town planners and architects to redesign and reconstruct that town because it is a regional embarrassment. As a solution to the aforementioned problems, we need the abolition of the Ingonyama Trust, or at least very dramatic changes that increase the responsiveness and accountability of the king and the trust to its people. Ngoma is one of the regions in Zululand where government's failings in providing the backbones of public service are the most blatant. The king should be using their heavily weighted role and status in questioning politicians about such shortfalls in public service. Instead, they are on mute together with the politicians. Ngoma is an utter infrastructural dead zone with lethargic economic activity. No investments taking place through business startups, no industrialization, no infrastructure development, no commerce. Due to this lukewarm behavior on the part of the Ingonyama Trust and the Zulu King to the empowerment of a broader section of the Ngoma public, we need an institutional innovation and revolution that will operate in a similar fashion to that of the Glorious Revolution. The revolution must reform the economy of Ngoma by promoting markets, industrialization, manufacturing, and simplifying the tax regime. Most important though is strengthening property rights and making the business people completely trust the government so that when setting up their businesses, their property is secure from any form of expropriation and vandalism. The revolution must increase the entrepreneurial spirit. Statistics have not been made available for me to gauge the ratio of entrepreneurs relative to the citizens of Ngoma, but I can estimate that Ngoma is not an entrepreneurial society. In my own literal assessment of how communities operate in many KZN's hinterlands, the type of transactions matter as they depend on the income levels of people occupying such communities. In a typical rural community, transactions include receipt of child support grants and pension grants, or what economists refer to as demand-side economics. Under such conditions, the economic betterment of the Ngoma people is a pipe dream. Economic transactions need to be diversified. We need to see other sort of transactions or facilitate them. We need to see people setting up businesses more or government supporting supply-side policies. The Zulu monarchy and the Ingonyama Trust haven't served this role because they only care for what benefits them. They are elitist. They are not people-based. All such reforms should lead to one thing, and that is placing constraints on the interests of the Zulu monarchy while vastly expanding the schemes that cater for the general public and its interests. On the issue of land, reforms must remove any impediments to using land in ways that undermine economic reform, such as mortgage, leasing, and sale. As I've lamented before that South Africa is too big to only have a select few major cities, such as Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. We must believe that urbanization is also possible in the hinterlands, such as Nongo. The Nongo municipality must think on a vision that transcends the patron-ward relationship that it maintains with the national government and actively promote commerce, industrialization, and entrepreneurship. If my home village has to establish itself on a close footing with economic advancement, those with power to make that change, namely the Ingonyama Trust and the Zulu monarchy, need to abandon the absolutism that is embedded in how they rule the village. This kind of leadership is contingent in keeping Nongoma rural and backward by maintaining strong traditional leadership lines. We have yet to see the political representation of the Nongoma people. When it comes to that region, it is only the Zulu monarchy that the entire world or the entire South Africa knows of. And the status of the Nongoma people is precarious and peripheral. I think that is insulting. We're more capable than that. The concept of economic growth and the responsibility of driving it must not be a lofty idea to be thought of as taking place somewhere else on the other side of the country. Rural vicinities such as Nongo must also carry that responsibility. They must quit operating in this fiscally unsustainable mindset of waiting for major municipalities or metro areas to conduct commerce and industry and always expecting budget handouts. It will be interesting to see data on many social and economic indicators pertaining to Nongo communities, such as access to clean water, good schooling, healthcare, literacy, life expectancy, and inequality of various forms. So our plight as residents of the homeland of poverty and technological backwardness should not be accepted passively, nor is it natural. It is by design and policy of European colonialism. The apartheid rule was aimed at creating surpluses of African labor by firstly land dispossession and then cramming us in economic dead zones. This collapsed our incentive structures. As an African society, we were then destitute of land resources and opportunities, which then forced us into accepting labor from the white man at cheap costs. Today's policies by the current government haven't unleashed a complete reversal of this abominable order of the apartheid rule. Today, hinterlands remain hinterlands because the government hasn't instituted policy changes that bring development to those hinterlands. People still have to board taxis and travel thousands of miles to find paid work, much like we used to do back in apartheid. But at least there was work back then. Today, employment opportunities are sparse. When I call for the development and modernization of the Nongoma village, there will be some voices reacting strongly against this advocation because they want to keep the region rural. I would like to remind those voices of the dual economy model by Arthur Lewis that the creation of many hinterlands, such as Nongoma, was not a spontaneous order by Africans. It was by apartheid, by several architects like Verwoerd. Such hinterlands were to be systematically classed as backwards to make labor emanating from them cheap, while this cheap labor maintains modern economic zones, such as major cities that we know today as Durban, Johannesburg, or Cape Town, and a few others. Today, many hinterlands are underdeveloped and impoverished because labor is extracted to find paid work in the major cities, a reproduction of the same process that was taking place during apartheid. Implications for this are negative because the withdrawal of black fathers who are separated from their families ends up disproportionately affecting black communities. An honest form of radical economic transformation would be to bring development to those hinterlands. Such development will bring the long-lost incentives to life. Such developments will bring jobs alongside many other benefits of modernization. This will also normalize nuclear families, as black people or black fathers will be able to find paid work within their communities. We need a nascent plan that puts in motion transformation so that village embarks on a rapid growth. We need to cover our own methods of contributing to the national GDP or national output, thus relieving the metro areas of this onerous responsibility of being the only municipalities that must grow the economy of South Africa. It is highly possible, and the opportunities of making this possible are vast. We must institutionalize any opportunity for such plans, that is, erecting institutions politically and economically. Such institutions will be manned by men and women of high capacity, demonstrated by good education and values of pluralism. There is so much to learn from history about how to rise to economic prominence regionally or nationally, but our focus is Mainongo, not at the national level. We can even convene conferences and consultations with economic advisors from around the world who possess first-hand experience of how others have done it. We just need to have that political will and be receptive to ideas. Currently, Nongoma contributes less than what we take out from the public purse, under the fateful excuse that we're just a rural economy or municipality. Therefore, there is no voluminous amount of markets and industry from which to source taxes to fund our own fiscal endeavors. Institutional drift away from the Zulu monarchy or the Ingonyama trust is much needed because they're not interested in bringing opportunities to their own people. The type of economic transactions taking place in Nongoma are rudimentary. They consist of supermarkets trading in a variety of products, such as apparel, food, and some textile products. There are some participants, ranging from repair shops or taxi operators. If we are well-meaning, bringing real economic betterment to the people of Nongoma, economic activities need to be more expansive and sophisticated than that. The Nongoma town, to me, only serves one use at present. You only get to board a taxi there and buy groceries. It's not a place to go find work, and we need to change that by introducing economic complexity to increase the role that the town plays in empowering the citizens of Nongoma. The question of economic sanity remains: what can be done by the chronic lack of industry and investment in this region of Nongoma? What is our total output in terms of manufacturing, infrastructure, or any sort of contribution towards the country's national output? Why haven't we scaled the density of the transport network, such as rail, paved roads, etc.? And lastly, why does it take so many years to build a simple engineering structure like a simple concrete bridge? We can send off the rough edges of the extractive relationship that the Zulu monarchy maintains with its people by emphasizing that it is dependent on the taxes collected by the government, and policymakers need to give this tax money on serious conditions. At present, the government just dishes out the tax money to the Zulu king for its own elitist functioning, and no one sees value coming out of this transaction. Things must change. We must introduce conditions for the funding of the Zulu monarchy. Such conditions must compel the monarchy to make concessions, outlining plans how they will be promoting local industry, infrastructure development, particularly roads, and just overall playing a part in the industrial growth of Nongoma. We need an institutional overhaul and redefinition of the Ingonyama Trust to one that widens benefits to the Nongoma society. Once again, we need the formation of a pluralist institution, such as maybe assemblies, whose functioning would bring a sense that there is equality before the law among the citizens of Nongoma, and that there's no differences in who gets what kind of political privileges. I want to establish a political system where common people question hierarchies, especially those imposed not on meritocracy or fraternity or expertise, such as the monarchy, in my opinion. The monarchy serves no developmental purpose of Nongoma. I loathe such institutions with every part of my being. At present, I'm convinced to draw likeness between the Ingonyama Trust with the marketing boards that are known to have extractive history in the African continent. They have a record of stunting agricultural growth of sub-Saharan Africa via extortionate tax regimes like the hard tax or the poll tax, which meant that for one to obtain relief from such taxation, one must share lineage with the chiefs. At present, all the money the Zulu king received from the government fuels inequality between the king and his subjects. Inequality is such an abominable term, and I believe that policymakers should transfer their nods into actions of reforming the funding models that currently only benefit the king in the direction that forces the king to share his monetary privileges with the people. Those funds should be vested in the interest of the entire citizenry of Nongoma and are chronically needed in building capable state bureaucracy and investing in the region's educational expansion. To urbanize Nongoma, we need to designate a region as an open village. This is just my suggestion, so that we can develop our ability to attract foreign investment, either from other domestic parts of the country or from abroad. That means the government should grow outside of the web of government regulation. That means autonomy for Nongoma, which is we will set our own regulation that we think serve the best interest of the Nongoma citizenry. Among such regulations are bolstering property rights, aggressively investing in education, supporting investment in technology and skills. China did it, and their rural economy took off. And Nongoma is also a rural economy. If you disagree and you want to keep Nongoma rural, then you are against human development. China would not have been able to lift almost 1 billion people out of poverty if they kept many of today's China's best cities rural, when Deng Xiaoping took the leadership baton from Mao Zedong. We also want to wake up one day and see new highways, business centers, and skyscrapers mushrooming in our Nongoma village. The infusion of millions of rands into the flamboyant lifestyle of the Zulu monarchy does not trickle down to the poorest of the poor in Nongoma. We see little to no benefit from it. To the governments that do, I want to pose a morally honest question to you. Would it not be economically and socially responsible and meaningful that those funds are used to build infrastructure and other public services that are essential for the people, for the development of the people instead?